All right, everyone. Welcome to Strictly Sports. I'm Jacob. Today we're going to do our 2020 NHL Western Conference playoff preview, joined with CJ Uri and Stephen Cashin. We're going to do this Western Conference playoff preview. We already posted our Eastern Conference playoff preview. You can check that out on all of our platforms. We're going to get into the West here. We don't actually know if these games are going to be played. Before we started last episode, we gave you guys the updated information as to what league officials were thinking about what the playoff format would be. We were thinking they might go with a different seeding or something like that. But now, Stephen, we were just talking a few minutes ago about another new playoff format. What is that looking like?
Yeah, so I was listening to a podcast last night with a few of the NBC hockey crew, and they were talking about how they were thinking the best way to go about it, whether it was the format we talked about last episode, but now they want to go to point percentage where they were saying, Patrick Sharp laid out a great point saying, let's backtrack to 68 games, put everyone on a level playing field, and go to percentage points. That way it makes every game matter, every game counted. But here's the thing. Now you're looking at it, well, Winnipeg has 71 games played, and, Vancouver and Nashville are 2 less games played, and they hold that spot by 2 points. So it works itself out. There'll be controversy, of course, because you have the Panthers, like we talked about, Rangers, all these teams that were playing lights out, still had 13 games left in the season. Who knows? That's 2 full weeks of hockey. Teams will get mad at it, but I think that's a good way to go. But they have 2 really good alternatives to go with here. So we'll see which route they go.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the most fair way to do it at this point. I mean, I'm a Ranger fan. CJ's a Panther fan. Listen, if our seasons get canceled, that's just the way it is. I mean, I can't get upset over something that no one can really control. I really do think that this points percentage system would be the most fair because, like you said, I mean, there's some teams that have played 2 or 3 more games and they're fine, like Winnipeg up in the standings. They're just chilling right now. Well, what about those teams that have played less games and haven't even had the opportunity to get those points? It's not fair to them. So I think you do have to go based off of that system that the NBC guys propose. What are your thoughts on that, CJ?
I think you need to do what's most fair. Hockey doesn't have the luxury of the NBA, it shouldn't even be labeled as a luxury, but hockey has a lot more parity than the NBA does, and there is more teams that actually had a fighting chance to make the postseason and actually make a run than in the NBA. Obviously, the NBA could start the playoffs tomorrow, and really no teams can have a gripe about it. But the NHL, as you stated, Rangers, the Panthers, these were teams that were playing really good hockey and were going to potentially sneak in. And then, you have another argument, the Columbus Blue Jackets right above them. They were injury ridden and, they were going to probably fall off going towards the end of the year. And, while the Rangers and the Panthers, they're playing great hockey and fun hockey to watch and definitely deserving of finishing out their season. So whatever the format's going to be, they need to include some sort of play-in game for like a 9 seed.
Yeah,
I don't even know. Something where they even add a third wild card team. I don't know what it is. They can have a weekend playoff, like a 4-day playoff where it's like these couple teams need to play best 2 out of 3 games, see if they sneak in. And I don't know. The recent proposed playoff formats that I've seen involving the 9 seed and the 10 seed were definitely more appealing to me. But in my opinion, if they're going to go through all this trouble, put these teams out in North Dakota, Las Vegas, wherever it's going to be, in a more isolated area, and have them finish out the regular season and see what happens there. It doesn't even have to be all 13 games. You can say you have 10 games. We're going to finish out the regular season off of 10 games, and the last 16 teams remaining is how we're going to do it. But if that's not an option and they need to go straight to playoff type hockey, then you have to include the 9 and 10 seed. That's literally just it's not fair. And a lot of teams with their superstars that are in playoff spots, like I've seen some Bruins say it, I've seen some Oilers players say it, I've seen Alexander Barkov say it. I've seen Sidney Crosby say it, and players like that saying, you got to finish out the season, or this has to be done fairly. I mean, I know there's probably a lot of organizations around the league and players that would sit there and be like, this isn't fair to the other teams. So They're in a tough spot, but I think they're going to make the most of it. But I will say they're going to have a lot of bad press if they just say, all right, the 8 teams from each conference that's in, and we're going to play. So we'll see what happens. But as long as they include that 9 and 10 seed, I don't think they're going to have any complaints.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, Ryan O'Reilly was like, excuse me, but Ryan O'Reilly was, to piggyback off that, O'Reilly was saying, we have to protect the integrity of the Stanley Cup
Yeah.
here. You have to play a full rounds, but on top of that, he was saying, you got to have the right teams in. And like CJ was just saying, you leave some of these teams out. Now there's question marks. There's an asterisk next to the cup saying, well, what if these teams got in? It changes the whole dynamic of a playoff run. I mean, a team gets in that, caught fire late in the season, it changes, everyone's matchups. We saw it last year. Columbus makes the run, knocks the Lightning out. Boom, it changes everything. So you really have to stay true to what you have in previous years and just you got to do the right thing and finish the season out and play as many games as you can with how much time we have left and keep the dynamic of a full round playoff and not do too much to it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's time. Will we have enough time to even do all these things? I mean, Gary Bettman sitting up there saying we might not get to play at all. We really have no idea. I think it all really depends on how much time does the NHL have, because when you really think about it, let's say, listen, free agency always starts on July 1st. If you have games going past July 1st, then you're going to have to shift free agency back, which means you might have to shift the next season back, maybe a few weeks, a few months. Do they want this season impacting the next one? That's going to be something they have to think about too.
Yeah, I believe that if they're gonna pushing back free agency and starting the NHL 3 to 4 weeks later than the normal start date should not be a problem, and that should be the least of their worries. If they have to push free agency back a month, I mean, you got to understand a lot of these teams get their deals done day 1 and day 2 of the NHL free agency.
Yeah,
the NHL opening free agency day is one of the most fun days in sports to watch if you just go on NHL Network because every 5 seconds another deal is made. And these teams just like to get their business out of the way. And they get it done within the first, 1 to 4 days of free agency. And even the biggest contracts, like Sergei Bobrovsky's contract with the Panthers, he's the highest paid goalie in the league. They got that done within the first 24 hours of free agency done. Artemi Panarin to the Rangers, They got that announced within 24 hours. And I don't think free agency should even be remotely part of their concerns. And I also think that if the NHL has to start instead of October, the first week of October, they have to start first week of November just to finish out the season. That is a great scenario. I mean, I wouldn't be complaining one bit. I mean, the NBA starts towards the end of October.
Yeah.
So I think that the NHL, there's a lot of downtime too. Once free agency, usually July or June.
Yeah, it's July 1. Yeah.
July. So if they need to say, there's so much downtime at the end of July, the August, and then players start reporting back and September 7th around there. I mean, seriously, there's enough time to make up free agencies if you started at the end of July. All these teams are going to get their business done within those 4 weeks anyway.
I mean, if that, I actually agree with you there. I mean, if that's the worst thing that comes out of this is that we just have to delay a season, who cares? I mean, as long as we're getting the conclusion of this season that we all deserve, that's really all that counts. And, you think about, the logistics of it all as well. That stuff we can get into in a whole different conversation. But let's start talking about this, West. And we're going to start with these teams here that are jumbled right at the bottom of the standings here in that 8 seed standing. So right now, the Minnesota Wild would not be in a playoff spot with 77 points. Whether that's fair or not, we'll talk about that. But we're just going to talk about them because there is a potential that maybe they could be in a play-in tournament or something like that. So the Wild were 35, 27, and 7, 21% on the power play, 77% on the PK. Their leading goal scorer in 64 games was Kevin Fiala with 54 points. So kind of low there. If he's your team leader in points, that's not that great. Suter at 36 years old is still scoring on the defensive side with 48 points. Jared Spurgeon had 32, Matt Dumba with 24, Eric Stahl and Zach Parise in there with 47 and 46 points. And then they also have Matt Zuccarello in there as depth. And then this year, Devin Dubnyk has really struggled in net, and Alex Stalock has been the main guy in net in there for Minnesota. When you guys look at Minnesota, what are you guys thinking? Because this is a team that They're always kind of in the middle. They make the playoffs. They're usually out in a round or two. They always think that, they can win those Stanley Cups. What is your guys' view on the Minnesota Wild?
So I mean, I look at this team this whole year. They've struggled, been mightily average because they've struggled to get scoring from their top guys. I mean, their top scorer is Kevin Fiala with 54 points, 23 goals, and then you kind of piggyback off of that, and you got Ryan Suter, Eric Stahl, Parise, 25-goal year, but two guys that are carrying their weight. You have two 20-goal scorers in our top 10 of scoring. I mean, you're not getting production out of that whole lineup, and you got Matt Zuccarello, not a great year, only 37 points. And then goaltending play just really struggled this whole year. You have Devin Dubik having a really bad year, 12 and 15 with a 3.35, 890 save percentage. And you look at that, and that's you're supposedly number one goalie, not doing the things you want him to be doing if you wanted to make it back to the playoffs. Alex Stalock has kind of taken the charge there, 20 and 11 with a 2.6 and a 9.10 save percentage. So they kind of ride the ship there with Stalock getting hot there. But the main Achilles heel for this team was, just not getting enough production from your top two lines.
Yeah, the Minnesota Wild have been a annual playoff contender, but I don't say Stanley Cup contender because they're a team that seems to always make the postseason and just get bounced round one. Which, it's great, your team's competitive, but I haven't had the luxury as a Panthers fan, but I'm sure as a Minnesota Wild fan, when you're constantly making the playoffs and you're just getting bounced after round one, and it's got to be pretty demoralizing. They're a point off the pace right now for a wild card spot, which, they've got they're 3 points out of a spot with 2 games in hand from Winnipeg. So that's annoying in itself if they're just going to shut down the season. But anyway, from a team perspective, I'm not scared of the Minnesota Wild. They don't do it for me. Out of Vancouver, Minnesota, the 2 closest teams to a wild card spot, I like Vancouver much more than I like Minnesota.
Oh yeah.
They have more flair to their game. I think Minnesota plays a little bit of a stagnant style of hockey. They don't necessarily play a fast game. They don't necessarily play a slow game, but it's nothing flashy. They benefit from good defense, and they benefit from Minnesota's a tough place to play anyway. To go into the Wild Arena, it's always very loud there. It's packed. They usually don't have a seat open. But yeah, they kind of rode Stalock there towards this end of the year stretch with only 13 games remaining. But I'm not really a big Wild guy. And if they were to do a playing game or a playing series best 2 out of 3, I think they get bounced by the Vancouver Canucks or even the Arizona Coyotes. I honestly like a little bit more than I like the Minnesota Wild because they just don't do it for me.
I agree with you. I mean, this is a team, like we both said. I mean, they get bounced every year. They don't have a top goal scorer. They don't have a threatening goalie. They kind of they're sitting down there at the bottom of the West. This is a conference that, let's face it, it's not as good as the East is. So you can kind of rack up points against these lower level teams more so than you can in the East, and then you have those teams, Vancouver, Nashville, that are tied for the 8 seed right now up there. But I mean, if you're Minnesota right now, you've got to be looking at your cap and saying, shit, man. I mean, because you're paying $4.5 million to Dubnyk. You're paying a shit ton of money to Parise and Suter. This is a team that's totally mismanaged their cap.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that team had a window, and as you said, they're kind of sitting there like, shit, what am I going to do now? I felt like that team had a window with a couple of their decor, Parise, Koivu.
Yeah.
The list goes down. I think that they missed their window, sort of like the San Jose Sharks. Now, the San Jose Sharks had a much more gifted roster than the Minnesota Wild ever did, but those were 2 teams that for like 4 years there, they had like a 4-year period was like, what do we need to do to get to the next level? Now, the Sharks were going to round 2. They couldn't get it. They just couldn't get to that Stanley Cup. The Minnesota Wild were going to round 1, and they just couldn't even get to round 2. And they kept sitting there, and they're like, well, should we make this signing? Should we make that signing? And nothing worked. And I really think it came down to they didn't have enough flair but throughout the roster. And I think they tied up, as you're saying, a lot of their cap into a few guys, and those few guys just didn't push them over the limit. They never had I don't know, let's put this into more popular sports players terms. They didn't have really Ovechkin kind of guy that was going to bring them to the playoffs and will them to the second round.
Right.
They didn't have a Evgeny Malkin caliber player that's outside of their first line guys, where it's like, first line's not producing right now. We can maybe lean on line 2. So that's the thing. I think that they were just good enough to constantly be a playoff team, but they just weren't good enough to bully a team out of round 1. And that's really where it comes down to. And I think they missed their window.
Agreed. And I also think they're obviously a product of being in the same division as the Blackhawks, who went on their cup runs and beat them seemingly every year in the playoffs. You have Nashville in there that went on a few years there where they were the best team, arguably in the West. They made a cup there. So the Wild have also been in pretty tough divisions. Of course, the Blues as well, winning the cup. So they've just been maybe a function of that as well. But now moving up in the standings, you have the Vancouver Canucks and the Nashville Predators. They're both tied for 78 points. The Canucks are 36, 27, and 6. The Predators 35, 26, and 8. Vancouver is 24% on the power play, 80% on the PK. That's really good. 24% on the power play. That's around where the Bruins are. I really like this Canucks team. I mean, we were texting each other last night saying, this team went on a little bit of a slide there at the end, but they have way more scoring depth than Minnesota does and more than Nashville does. They've got JT Miller, and it kind of annoys me because I'm a Ranger fan. He never did this for the Rangers, but he's got 27 goals, 45 assists for the Canucks this year. JT Miller's been fantastic. They have Elias Pettersson, 27 goals, 39 assists. Bo Horvat, 53 points. Brock Bozer, 45 points, 57 games. Tanner Pearson, Tyler Toffoli, Virtanen, Gaudette. They've got a deep offense. Then they've got Quinn Hughes on defense, who's really producing there as a rookie with 53 points. And then Edler, Tyler Myers, Tanev as well, with Markstrom behind net. I think this is a Canucks team that's actually really complete, and they totally deserve a shot in the playoffs, in my estimation.
I agree in that sense. I'm looking at their last 10 games played. They lost to the Ducks. They lost to the Wild. They lost to the Maple Leafs, who were not playing good hockey. They lost to the Blue Jackets, who had injury concerns, and they don't score a lot. The Blue Jackets are not a good offensive team, and they put up freaking 5 goals on the Canucks. Then they lost to the Blue Jackets again a week later, and then the Islanders put up 4 against them, and the Canucks ultimately battled back and won in a shootout. So here's the thing about this Vancouver Canucks. They have the pieces. What they're building there is really good. I actually believe, and I might get a lot of dirty looks here, but I think the Canucks have the better Hughes brother. Quinn Hughes, I like better than Jack Hughes in my opinion.
Might actually be better, yeah.
Well, he's panning out to be better right now, and he's a Calder Trophy type guy. He's a perennial all-star defender that he might be molding into. So going forward, if you're a Canucks fan, say this season doesn't play out, say they're not granted to get in the playoffs, which would be absolutely ridiculous. They have a lot going for them in building free agency. They have a lot going for them in building a roster going forward. But when it comes to the Canucks, they were frustrating the crap out of me. So as someone who likes to watch hockey and likes to make friendly bets with my friends on the side, they were just destroying me. I really liked their matchups that they were having. They played a lot of their crucial games at home. They had the Wild at home. They had the Coyotes at home, the Blue Jackets at home, and it just they were losing these games. And then the night that I'm like, to my Boston Bruins friend, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not taking the Canucks tonight. No thanks. They put up 9 goals against the Boston Bruins and beat them 9-3. Not many teams can put up 9 goals in the NHL, let alone the best team in the NHL. They did. So as you can see, the Canucks they're legit, but they're young right now. They're still getting out of that Sedin phase of those years where that team underperformed, and they got to retool the roster and get the cap space back. But I like the Canucks, and if they were to get in the playoffs, I like them way more than I like the Nashville Predators. I like them way more than than the Minnesota Wild. So that's that for my Canucks.
What about you, Steven?
Yeah, I agree with everything CJ said. They're a couple pieces away from being a true cup contender, in my opinion. You made a great trade in getting JT Miller in the offseason, leading every scoring statistic on the team. Elias Patterson, really good young player. I mean, that guy's gonna be he's gonna be a superstar in the next few years. And then you got Quinn Hughes, Calder candidate, along with Cale Makar. I mean, two young, good players and rising the league. Then you got Bo Horvat, Besser. I mean, you go down the line, the defenseman, Tyler Myers, Chris Tanev, you go, I mean, this team, in a couple of years, they learn how to play with each other, add a couple pieces, and who knows where these young guys will take them. And you've been backed by solid goaltending play, too. Jacob Markstrom, 23 and 16, 275 goals against, and a 918 save percentage. That, to me, gives them the edge over the Predators, they've been struggling all year to find, consistency and getting that good goaltending play. You've had UC Saros and Pecorine both battling back and forth. So I give the edge to the Canucks just because of their goaltending play. But then on the same hand, they've been up and down all year. Win 4, lose 3. And then certain nights you see them, like CJ said, you go out and score 9 against Boston, and you turn around the next night you're getting shut out by, let's say the Columbus Blue Jackets. I mean, it goes both ways, and that comes with on the same token as growing up and finding ways to win night in and night out, and that's what separates you from
I
the
think
best
this
teams in the
is just a
NHL.
team in Vancouver that as the years go along, they're just going to get better and better with age and with experience. They're kind of like Carolina of the West, where they have the pieces. They got to lose in the playoffs first before they really start going on runs. They're probably a little bit ahead of the New York Rangers. I'm just trying to think of teams to compare them to. Like the Rangers have a good young core, young goalie, young defense. So do the Canucks. They have everything. Everything's young over in Vancouver, and it just takes time to develop some of those things. So I do look at this Canucks team. You're going to have to face the number 1 seed, who are the St. Louis Blues. You're not going to win that series. So this is their year. Get in the playoffs, see what it's like, play your ass off, and then the next year come back, and maybe you can be in that 3, 4, 5 seed, 6 seed, playing a lesser team next year. You never know with this Canucks team because the West is not that deep. This is a team of young players with some nice talent. Peterson, Bezer, Horvat, Quinn Hughes, just the list goes on. I mean, this is a Canucks team that I really like going forward. But then you compare them with another 78-point team, the Nashville Predators. They're terrible on the power play. So Vancouver scores 24% on the power play. Nashville scores 17% on the power play, 76% penalty kill rate. Their leading scorer is Roman Josi, the defenseman, 16 goals, 49 assists. He's a plus 22 on the plus minus. Really love that stat. Ryan Ellis on D with 38 points as well. And then their leading goal scorer on the offensive side for the forwards is Philip Forsberg in 63 games, has 21 goals, 27 assists. Then Matt Duchene has 42 points, Ryan Johansson 36, and then a collection of Nick Bonino, Yarn Croak, Kyle Turris, Victor Arvidsson. And then, like you mentioned earlier, Steven, that goaltender battle right now between Saros and Rinne, who honestly I'd give it to Saros at this point. He's way younger, 24 years old. Every stat is better than Rinne. Rinne, guys, now is 36 years old. At some point, sometimes that production is going to go down with age, especially at the goaltending position. You can go from being the tip top of your position to rock bottom in a second with age.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but I look at this Nashville team. They can score defensively, but offensively, I mean, you have Forsberg, and then it's kind of everyone else. I mean, Duchene, 42 points, that's good. But from a guy like that, you want something way better than that. Ryan Johansson really is not scoring the way he used to. And then it's just a bunch of depth players on offense after that. The Nick Boninos, the Carl Yarncroaks, the Kyle Turrises. They're not elite goal scorers. So I look at this Nashville team, bad at goalie, okay at defense, can't really score. I'd take Vancouver. What are your guys' thoughts on this Nashville team? We'll start with Steven.
Yeah, you hit the points right on it. I mean, you look at their top 10 scoring, and three of their defensemen are in the top 10 of their scoring list. And it's not a problem. It's a good thing. It's a good sign that your defensive core is contributing to your offensive success when you're having it. But on nights when guys like Forsberg, Duchene, Johansson's not scoring, Bonino's locked down, the scoring drops off. You look down the list. You mean, what do you rely on? Guys like Kyle Turris, Craig Smith. I mean, Arvidsson. If those guys aren't producing behind your top guys, you're going to be struggling to win games. And that's where we've seen this Nashville team kind of struggle throughout the years. When scoring's not going right, guys aren't producing, stepping up to the plate. They get shut down. They're scoring 1 goal a game, getting shut out. And then occasionally you're getting bailed out by your goaltending play, but this Nashville team is too pedestrian for me to see them in the playoffs. If they were to make it in and get to the ones and play the Blues, they have beaten St. Louis 4 times
Wow.
this year and swept the season series, which is surprising to me. I saw it last night. All close games, 2 went to overtime, and 2 were 1-goal games in regulation. But they kind of have the Blues' number this year. If they were to get in, you never know. But to me, in the playoffs, they would get handled just because of the fact that they would run into a team with way better depth than them, and the goaltending is just hasn't been there all year for them.
My Predators take is very similar, and I really like the word you use, Steven, pedestrian. Something that I've had a problem with the Nashville Predators with the last couple of years is the fact that they don't have enough flair in their top 2 lines. I think they've got some really good bottom 6 type guys. I think their line 3 and line 4 are actually good. Line 3, line 4 functioning lines. I think that they do their job. I think line 3 plays fast and hard, and I think their line 4 hits really well, and they finish their checks. I mean, that's what you really ask for from your bottom 6 guys. You know, skate fast, hit hard, generate pucks on net, get off, and let's get our skill players back out on the ice. But the thing is I don't like their skill players like Jacob said, outside of Forsberg. And I think that they have a really good defense. I think they score very well through defense, and I think they run their offense through the defense, which, you know, sounds a little crazy. You know, most teams like to cycle the puck down low with forwards, play fast, pass fast, and then, you know, get the puck back up to the D line, to the blue line, and then, you know, generate a shot. But I think that they generate all their offense really through their defense, who drives the puck forward. And I think, just like I said about the Wild, and just like I said about the San Jose Sharks, I think the Predators kind of missed their window. Last year they choked in the playoffs. I actually had the privilege of being in Nashville during that series for a weekend, which was nuts. I will say the Nashville Predators have some amazing fans. That place goes nuts there. The catfish on the ice, all that stuff, it's crazy there. And if they were to make the playoffs, it's an extremely tough place to play, but I don't think that they pose enough of a threat going forward offensively. I agree with the fact that Matt Duchene is not really scoring the way he used to. I used to think Duchene was the next big thing back when he entered the league. I mean, he was playing really good hockey, and he's fast and snipes. I mean, it's really what you ask from a guy, from a forward, and, you know, he's really tailed off in his career. I think he had a pretty good bounce back with Columbus last year, but then this year just it hasn't really been working out in Nashville. You know, it's not a bad relationship, but it's just not a very fruitful one.
Making a lot of money
for what
too.
He's being paid, yeah, especially for what he's being paid. So I think the Nashville Predators, if they were to get in, they're a first round exit kind of team. I think the Blues would win that series 4-2. Just because I give 2 wins to the Predators, just because I've beaten them 4 times this year, and I like the Preds at home twice in that series. So I think the perfect word, which was what Steve said, was they're very pedestrian. And, you know, when you know that they're going to be generating offense through their defenders, and they don't really have many guys that are going to score, it makes it that much easier for a team like the Blues, who are incredibly physical and very good defensively. It's just shut down their top 1 or top 2 guys, and, you know, that's kind of it for them. But I think the Predators, they really need to be looking at this like, how are we going to fix this? Because we've created a winning culture here. Now, how do we sustain the winning culture even after we've kind of screwed this up?
Right. I mean, you know, they did fire Peter Laviolette in the middle of the season, probably for those reasons. You know, how do we shake this thing up? You know, Laviolette's a guy that got them to the Cup. They couldn't win it. Years passed, you know, they start losing in the playoffs again. You know, they're kind of a souped up version of what the Wild are. You know, the Wild just never got to that Stanley Cup. Well, the Predators did. Before that, the Predators were like the Wild. They lost every single year in the playoffs, choked every year. So that was a Predators team that every year they were top of the standings in the West, couldn't ever get to the Cup. When they got there, they got beat by Pittsburgh. It was really no competition. But I don't think we're the first ones to figure this out here. You just need a guy who can put the puck in the back of the net at the end of the day. If you don't have that guy that you can just pass it to him and you know he's going to score a goal once every few games, like that Steven Stamkos, Artemi Panarin, Alex Ovechkin type of guy that's going to score a goal virtually every game or do something every single game. The Predators don't have that. The Wild don't have that. And I think that's what's going to really hamper them as we go forward here. But talking about the team that's going to face this Nashville Predators team, the St. Louis Blues, the defending Stanley Cup champions, 42, 19, and 10. That's 94 points. Ryan O'Reilly, 12 goals, 49 assists. It's a lot of points, but not a lot of goals. David Perron, 25 goals, 35 assists. Braden Shen, 25 goals, 33 assists. Jaden Swartz, 22 and 35. And then Pietrangelo on the defensive side with 16 goals, 36 assists. And then, of course, Tarasenko is going to come back from injury. He missed virtually the entire season. They'll also have him back when they start the playoffs. Huge factor. And then in goal, they have Jordan Binnington, 50 games played, 256 GAA, a 912 save percentage. But actually, if you look at the stats, Jake Allen, been there for a long time, he's actually outplayed Binnington in some statistics, although in half the games, in 24 games played, a 215 GAA, 927 save percentage. So Allen, a guy that's been around, maybe as a backup, that's why his stats are a little higher than Binnington's are right now. But if I'm the Blues, stick with Binnington and net. Obviously, he just won you a Stanley Cup not even a year ago. I look at this Blues team. What are they? They're big, they're strong, they're skilled. That's what you need in the playoffs. They're a great defensive team. They're great at goalie. They've got that guy in Tarasenko who can put the puck in the back of the net. I really don't see many problems with this Blues team. CJ, we'll start with you. Not just the first round, but how far do you have the Blues going in the playoffs in general?
I have them at the very least back in the conference finals. When I look at this Western Conference, they're definitely the class of the West right now. So you have to tip them to go, at the very least have a shot to series to get back into the Stanley Cup situation. Now, I'll tell you right now, I really like Colorado. I like the Avs a lot this year. They might be my favorite team outside of the Panthers to watch, just because I'm a huge Panthers fan. But I love watching the Avs. They play so fast. Nathan MacKinnon is incredible. He might have the best shot in the league. I mean, holy cow, the guy's insane. He's fast. He shoots the hell out of the puck. And he's a guy that's actually very similar to Ovechkin, who's not afraid to get dirty and hit someone. And then you go down the list there. Mikko Rantanen, Cale Makar, Gabriel Landeskog. I mean, dude, the list just goes on. They're really good. So I like in the West either St. Louis or Colorado to represent the West in the Stanley Cup final. But I mean, I don't really see any flaws with the St. Louis team. I wish they had maybe one more scorer. Maybe one more guy that's a Barkov type player, a Nicholas Backstrom type player, somebody who's a little selfless and is very good at setting up his players, because I do find that they play a lot of grinded out hockey, but their grinded out hockey is so perfected because they hit so well and they shoot the puck well. I don't have any problems with this team, so I see them at the very least being in the Western Conference Finals. And, I mean, if I were to do a bracket today, I'd probably have them back in the Stanley Cup. But I would love a Western Conference Finals of the Avs and Blues if possible. The Blues are at 94 points right now, and the Avs are at 92 points with one less game played. But, yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said. You can't really say a bad thing about the Blues. Just defending Cup champions, they play incredible defense. They've got a great goalie with a chip on his shoulder, and they get it done offensively. So what's there not to like, really?
You've hit everything around the head. I mean, I see this team going back to, like you said, the conference final at the least, but you're going to run into the Avs or the Stars in round two, no matter what. To me, that's going to be the conference final. If they get past the second round, either one of those two teams, I think they get to the Cup final. You look at St. Louis and Colorado, they've been the benchmark for the West all season long. St. Louis, to me, gets the edge because they play so physical and they're defensive minded. They sit back on the play, don't really rely on the breakout like many teams in the NHL do nowadays. And it's all about speed, this, speed, that. But, Pat Maroon said it last year when they were on their Cup run. We're going to wear teams out. We're going to hit them in the corner. We're going to hit these superstars. Not many guys want to keep getting hit 3-4 times in a row and still want to keep going to the corners and working those corner battles. And that's why you saw St. Louis gain so much success with their physical style of play, because they just wore teams out, got to Game 6 and Game 7, and then they just unleashed the dogs and scored the goals and won in Game 6 and 7, closed the door. I look at this lineup, this whole roster. Ryan O'Reilly's leading the way. You got Perron right behind him. And then you got guys that just bought into the system the last 2-3 years. Braden Shen, Jaden Schwartz, Petrangelo has carried that team as the captain. I really like his play on the blue line. And then you got Colton Parenko on the blue line as well, a big defenseman scoring 10 goals this year, 28 points. Guys that are logging a ton of minutes, and they really bank off their defensive play to win them games. And then you got Bennington. He's a rock back there. Just coming out of the blue last season, that team's in the weeds in January. They call him up from San Antonio, and he just really led the way. The confidence on that guy is just unbelievable. He goes, you know what? Watch me. I'm going to do it. I know I can do it. And we saw great things out of him in the Cup final, the whole run, really, and just amazed everyone. I think the St. Louis Blues team is complete. They got
I really like
Tarasenko
that.
back,
You
and they're
guys
ready
have
to
kind
go
of like
for a run.
alluded to it. I think it's just that stuff that, it just doesn't show up on the stat sheet for them. They get guys out of the corners. They play so well defensively. There's no stat out there that tells you that stuff. You just have to see that stuff by watching them and knowing how they play. It's just that extra stuff that this Blues team knows how to do at the end of the day. Guys, we're back here. We're going to do the 2v7 matchup, or not 2v7 anymore, based on this new playoff format. It would be a different matchup. It would actually be between the Colorado Avalanche and the Dallas Stars. So we look at Dallas, 37-24-8, 82 points, 79.7% on the PK, 21.1% on the power play. So their main two stars, they've gone down in production. Tyler Seguin, Jamie Benn, they're not the guys they used to be. Seguin was 17, 33 assists, still above average, not really what he used to be. Jamie Benn, though, is the one who's really dipped off. 19 goals, 20 assists, not even close to the guy that he used to be. They also have Radulov, Hintz, and Pavelski on that offense, all in the 30 to 35 point range. They have Heiskanen on D with 35 points, John Klingberg in reduced time with 32 points, and then in net, they have actually a really nice tandem between Ben Bishop and Anton Khudobin. So Ben Bishop, top 10 in the league in GAA. Anton Khudobin leads the NHL in save percentage. So it's really, they're both 33 years old. Either one you go with is a nice option in net. And then you look at the Avalanche, 42, 20, and 8, 92 points. They're 19% on the power play, 81% on the PK. Nathan McKinnon, you just mentioned it, CJ, incredible. I mean, I watched this guy play, and it's just like, holy shit, when you see him skate. 58 assists, 35 goals in 69 games. Kale Maker, 50 games played, 12 goals, 38 assists. Then they have Burakovsky, Landeskog, Rantanen, Kadri on that offense. They have a lot of D-men too. Gerard, Graves, Cole, Johnson, Zadorov. That's a 6-deep defense right there. And then that goaltending position's where it gets interesting. Frank Kuz and Grubauer make a pretty nice tandem over there as well. But where do you guys see this? Because I look at it this way. I agree with CJ here. I think Colorado is actually better than St. Louis is. They have played a game less than St. Louis. Who knows? They might be tied with St. Louis right now if they had played that game. I think Colorado's deeper offensively. I think they're deeper defensively, and goaltending, it's probably St. Louis. But specifically speaking with this Colorado and Dallas matchup, I hate to keep switching subjects here. How do you look at that specific matchup, Colorado and Dallas? And we'll start with you, CJ.
I actually like the Stars. They had a little bit of drama at the beginning of the year with the owner calling them out. Their star players, that he called them out because they just weren't really playing good hockey. I haven't seen really anything from Jamie Benn this year. Tyler Seguin has had some streaks of old Tyler Seguin. But when it comes to the Stars, I actually like their defense a little bit more than I like the offense. You mentioned some players. I really like Heiskanen. I like Klingberg. I like their goalie situation. I really like Ben Bishop. But, I'm not going to even really focus too much on the Stars here because I don't think this is really a series the Stars are going to win.
Exactly, yeah.
It would really take a choke job from the Avs. So I really like the Avs in 6. The Dallas Stars are not an easy play round 1, but they are easy enough for this to not go 7 games. I like the Avs to start this series off 2-0 at home, and then I like the Stars to get 1 back, and then I like the series to be 3-1, and then I think that with their backs against the walls, the Stars are able to get 1 back, and then Avs close it out 4-2 just to pan out the series for you. But look, I think Cale Makar is the best young defenseman in the league. He's really, 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 really good. I mean, if you watch some of the plays he was making last year when they called him up toward playoff time, I mean, he finished up his season in college, won some awards, and then they called him up, and then he joined the Avs in the playoffs, and He played some unbelievable hockey. I mean, imagine I'm pretty sure his NHL debut was like in the playoffs, which is just insane. It might have been. I could be wrong, but anyway, he was playing crucial games down the stretch, and then he got to be with the team full year this year. He hasn't really disappointed. So that's that. But then, I mean, the Avs get a lot of press for their offense, but nobody really respects the defense as much, and they really should. I think the Avs can easily be named the number one team in the West. Obviously, the Blues are still the class. They're defending Cups champs. But I think that when this series happens, because it will happen, they're going to have to play out this playoffs at some point. And when this series happens, you're going to really see how good the Avs are, because the Stars are no pushover team. But when they're going to be manhandling the Stars, they're going to be running them out of the arena a couple games in this series, you're going to see this Avs team is here to stay, and this Avs team is legit. So I got the Avs here in 6.
What about you, Steven? What would you have this series at?
I might be an unpopular opinion, but I would have the Stars in 7. I look at this season, I break it down, and this Stars team is kind of slept on me. When Ben Bishop gets going, he's one of the best goalies in the league, if not the best. I look at the season series, Stars swept that 4-0. All but one were 1-goal games. Dallas won the second matchup 4-1. But I break it down and I go, well, this Colorado team, the last 13 to 16 games, they were all 1-goal games as well. Great scoring. They have good depth themselves. Still a young team, still trying to find ways to win the playoffs. They did knock off the Calgary Flames last season. I like their play. They're fast and quick, but you get into a 7-game series and you get Ben Bishop rolling, and you have guys like Sagan, Ben, and their defensive core. I mean, Heiskanen, Klingberg, Liddell. We're talking about a team that went 7 games to the St. Louis Blues last year and lost in double overtime. Ben Bishop had a 54 save outing, and I think you get him into that series with the Avs, and I think it'll be a lot closer than people think. And the addition of Joe Pavelski too in the offseason, another guy who's been through the ringer in the playoffs and knows how to win games in the springtime. But the matchup will be really interesting. I think Dallas they play the opposite to how the Avs do. The Avs are a breakout team. They're working on the rush. Dallas kind of sits back. They wait, use their goaltender to their advantage, and then work off the power play and kind of just score a couple goals, and they'll try to play defensive and win those games.
You do bring up some pretty good points there. I mean, it kind of got me thinking:
opinion.
Are we overrating Colorado a little bit? Because if you really look at that offense, yes, McKinnon's unbelievable, 35 goals, 58 assists, but other than him, there's no other number 2 star with him, because I love Burakovsky.
Whoa. We are totally disrespecting Mikko Rantanen here.
I think he's great, legit. But is he a number 2 superstar type guy?
100%.
Okay. So you have
one. I will say that people rate Mikko Rantanen and this McKinnon duo very similar to the Crosby-Malkin duo. That's how good these guys are. I'm telling you. They are legit. Mikko Rantanen has not been able to play.
You're right. Yeah, I'm looking at this stat line. He's got 19 goals, 22 assists in 42 games. That's 41 points. That's pretty unreal.
Pretty much a point per game player, and he's only 23. Only 23. No,
he's...
Cale Makar is legit too. And Gabriel Landeskog, people forget, because Gabriel Landeskog is line 2 center, but he wears the captain. Before McKinnon, it was Gabriel Landeskog. And if you look up Gabriel Landeskog's stats, they're also pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, that's great and all, but I mean, at the end of the day, that's 4 forwards. So I mean, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I mean, they're all really amazing forwards, and a lot of teams would kill to have those players. I'm just saying, are we overrating them to the sense that they might, because we keep saying, are they better than the Blues who just won the Cup? I think we've got to see that.
Well, I mean, look, you can make any argument that they're being slightly overrated, and I'm not going to sit here and say that we are not slightly overrating the Colorado Avalanche. We might be, but we're not overrating them to the point that we're going to sit here and say that they're going to get bounced round 1. This Avs team is at the very least a round 2 team. At the very least, I think that they're a Western Conference Finals type team. I mean, these guys are young. Gabriel Landeskog has been in the league since 2011. He's only 27 years old.
Yeah.
All right, they're young, fast, and they've been in the league. Like they're drafting these players young, and they've outperformed where their draft stock was. Apart from, of course, Nathan McKinnon, who was drafted very very high. But look, I think this Avs team has all the pieces to be really good, and I think that the Stars are a perfect warm up for them because they're going to lose a few games, but they're ultimately going to win that series. Steve, the fact that you're saying that this Avs team is going to lose in 7. I would love to bet you on air right now.
Hey, let's do it.
That this series doesn't even go 7 games, and the Avs go to round 2 and have some time to spare.
Oh,
all right. I'll gladly take that bet. I like this matchup a whole lot.
We'll just do a friendly $20. All right, $20.
All right.
It does not go 7, and
you
the
said
Avs win.
It doesn't go 7,
wow.
and the Avs win. All right. All right. I lay this point out here too, though. The Avs remind me a lot of like the Bruins for top line. They're not saying their two teams are the same, but in previous years, Boston, you shut down the Pastrnak, Marchand, Bergeron line. Outside of this McKinnon, Landeskog, Rantanen line, you'd start looking at their secondary scoring, though. They have some secondary scoring in, John Skoy, Samuel Girard, good defensive pair with Ian Cole there. But if you were to shut down this McKinnon line, Burakovsky, Landeskog, Rantanen, where you're going to have to start pulling scoring. That's where I see the problem there is if the Stars' defensive core is able to find success in shutting these guys down, McKinnon, world-class player. But I look at Ben Bishop, he's been through these runs and he can catch fire so many times. But that's where I see the problem with the Avs. There's flaws there. They're really good. I really could see them in the second round, but I just think that this Stars team can't be taken as lightly as people think.
So we have our first controversy here on Strictly Sport. I think that's like the first time we've disagreed, guys. We've been pretty agreeable on these pods. So now we got a big $20 bet going on this. I mean, I guess I'm the mediator here. I guess I have to go with CJ. I agree. I think the Avs, it's kind of I don't want to call it a warm-up series, but the Stars are not, I respect their talent. I think they have a great defense. You got to respect their experience and Ben Bishop. At the end of the day, I do think it's a 6-game series. They will lose a few, and I think Colorado will move on to the second round and be a cup contender. How far they go after that, that's to be determined. So let's look at the other matchups here. We've got Vegas in here, 86 points. They're 39, 24, and 8, 22% on the power play, 76.6 on the PK. They've got Max Pacioretty, 32 goals, 34 assists. Nice rebound season for him. He hasn't been scoring like he was in Montreal in a few years. They have Stone on there, 21 goals, 42 assists. Riley Smith, Jonathan Marchessault, William Karlsson on D. They've got Alec Martinez, Shea Theodore, Nate Schmidt, and in goal, Marc-Andre Fleury. He's gone a little back, not quite the guy he was the season before, or the season before that, actually, when they went to the Cup Finals, but Fleury's not that same guy. 277 GAA, 905 save percentage. And then in this new format, they'd be facing the Winnipeg Jets, 37, 28, and 6. They have 80 points. They're 20.5% on the power play. And this is where Winnipeg is my team, guys. They're just sitting here as like an elite team, and no one's really talking about them. Kyle Connor, 38 goals, 35 assists. Mark Scheifele, 29 goals, 44 assists. Blake Wheeler, 22 and 43. Liney, 28 and 35. Ehlers, 25 and 33. That's a bunch of guys right there that can score. And then you have Neil Pionk on the defensive side with 45 points, Morrissey with 31 in reduced time. And then, of course, Connor Hellebuck back in net with great stats, 922 save percentage, 257 GAA. I look at this series. I think Winnipeg takes it in 6, better at goalie, better with offensive depth. And quite frankly, defensively, they're better too. I'm taking Winnipeg 6. What about you guys? We'll start with Steven this time.
This one's interesting. I think you're right. I like Winnipeg a whole lot. I've watched them quite a few times this year, and when they're at home, they play really well behind that crowd. Connor Hellebuck has been key for their success too this year, 31, 21, and 5 with a 2.5 and a 922 save percentage, 6 shutouts on the year. So he's really carrying his weight. I think he leads the league in shutouts, if I'm not mistaken. They did go through a rough patch there in the middle of January where they lost 7 out of 8 and 11 out of 13. So that's where I think their season kind of the wheels started to fall off the wagon a little bit in that January stretch. But going down as of late, they were winning 4 or 5 games in a row. Team that no one was really talking about, they make it in. They're really dangerous, like you were saying. Scheifele, Kyle Connor, Blake Wheeler, Patrick Laine, all 60-plus point scorers. And then you got their secondary scoring. You have Ehlers, and then you got Neil Poink at defense. Morrissey at defense too. Their blue line's really strong. Matching them up against Vegas, I think it'd be really close. Marc-Andre Fleury still is playing like he was in his early days. He has 5 shutouts, a 2.77, 905 save percentage, winning 27 games this year. I'm not a big believer in this Vegas team. I think they have a lot of weaknesses on their defensive
Alex
side.
Martinez as well.
Yeah, you have Shea Theodore, you have Nate Schmidt, but Alex Martinez, you did make an addition at the trade deadline coming over from LA there, but I like their first line with Marchessault, Riley Smith, Pacioretty, but nothing that really that stands out to me going, wow, I think they can really make a deep run. Yeah, their first year they caught everyone by surprise, but I think if you shut that first line down, Winnipeg is strong enough too. They're another team that can play physical and push you around, and they get things rolling with those first 2 lines. Get solid goaltending play with Hellebuck. They'll outman you in the corners. I think Winnipeg takes a
I don't
series
really
as
know what's
well.
happened with Winnipeg. I like Kyle Connor a lot, but Patrick Laine, like 2 years ago, was looking like one of the next biggest things in the league. I mean, the guy was just ridiculous, but I feel like he's fallen off a little bit here in his production, and I don't really know what's going on. You don't really hear much
28
about
goals
him
and 35 assists is falling off. In reduced games too.
And how many games?
68
played?
compared to the other guys. They played 73 games, so he slept 5 games compared to everyone else.
So how many points? How many points does he have?
Well, 28 plus. Yeah. I mean, that's
63 and how many games?
68? 63 points.
Okay, well, all right. I made an overstatement that he was falling off the wagon a little bit, but he's not the same player he was 2 years ago. A couple years ago, he netted like 40-something goals, something like that. He wasn't going to get there this year. And I think it was last year he did have not that great of a year. And I'll look that up before I'm done. But anyway, regardless, I don't know if I like the Winnipeg Jets winning the series. I actually like the Winnipeg Jets as a team. I don't know if I like them against Vegas. Vegas plays really good in the playoffs. As we've seen past 2 years, they have a second gear. They shouldn't have really even been bounced last year in round 1, but they did lose. They completely imploded. Which was just insane. To that Sharks where they scored like 4 goals in 3 minutes was just nuts. But yeah. But anyway, I like Vegas here. I like it in 7. I think this is going to be one of the better series this round 1 in the playoffs. I think that this series goes 7. I like Vegas because they have home ice. But yeah, Max Pacioretty playing much better hockey this year. Marchessault, Riley Smith, Bill Carlson, Marc-Andre Fleury. They have a mean edge to their game in the back end too. They hit really well. And I like Winnipeg enough to where they're going to win 3 games. I mean, outside of Patrick Laine, that Kyle Connor, Wheeler, they have a good team, and Hellebuck is playing ridiculous. I mean, he's one of the quiet players this year that's been like, wow, this guy's legit. He could win the Vezina. That's how good he's been playing. But I like Vegas in 7 here because of home ice, and I think they have a second gear, and I think that they're coming out here to prove something. I think they're really upset about last year, and they're going to get to round 2 and make some noise.
Wow. So we got 1 Vegas, and Steven, do you have Winnipeg winning the series?
Yeah, I have Winnipeg winning the series. Whether it's 6 or 7, I think they have enough to get it done. But going off that real quick, I don't think sports fans, let alone NHL fans, realize how good these playoffs could be. Everyone's rested. Everyone's getting their guys back. We could see the most Game 7s, I think, in a playoff run that we've ever seen. Just because how evenly matched teams could be. We don't know who's going to come out hot, who's going to come out. There's so many ways this can go. I'm excited for this, and I think each playoff matchup can go different ways. This could be the craziest playoffs
Oh, I mean,
ever.
And
I'm
real
looking
quick,
yeah,
forward to
yeah.
it. I hope we get going, but I have
real
Winnipeg
quick,
winning the series.
Patrick
I
Line in
think in seven.
2018-2019, 82 full games played. He played the entire season. He only had 30 goals and 20 assists, giving him 50
Yeah,
points in
that's a down
82
year.
games and a minus 24 plus minus. So that's kind of what I was talking about. But this year he has rebounded, so I will retract my statement that he's falling off the wagon. I think he's getting back on the wagon that he fell off. But anyway,
Yeah, I mean,
on to the next.
yeah, so we'll move on here. I mean, but what you just said, Steve, I mean, if we get these playoffs back, there are years where I just, I pick series that I'm not going to watch. This year, I might watch all of these NHL games because I really do think all of these series are going to be tremendous. And now you look at another series that would be great. Edmonton Oilers, 83 points, 37, 25, and 9. It's really McDavid, Draisaitl, and Nugent Hopkins. On the offensive side, of course, Connor McDavid, 64 games, 34 goals, 63 assists. Those are actual real numbers. And then even more insane numbers in 71 games, Leon Draisaitl, 43 goals, 67 assists. That's 110 points in 71 games. Like, it's unthinkable what these guys are doing. And then Ryan Nugent-Hopkins with a casual 22 goals and 39 assists in 65 games. Then on the defensive side, they have Clefbaum and Nurse leading the way. Those are two really solid D-men. And then they have Smith and Koskinen in net. They don't really, it's kind of a tandem there as to which one's going to start. They made some trade deadline acquisitions, getting Mike Green and Antonisiu from Detroit. So they tried to beef up that offensive depth because, again, other than the big three, it's them and everyone else. So I look at this Oilers team and who are they facing here? I believe they'd be facing the Calgary Flames at 79 points. It'd be an overwhelming matchup, I think, Edmonton, because I like Calgary. They have some goal scorers, to Chuck, Goudreau, Lindholm, Monahan, Backlund. But on defense, Calgary really struggles. So it is a battle of Alberta as well between Edmonton and Calgary. How do you see this guy going, guys? I have it 7 games either way. I'm honestly, at the end of this conversation, I'm going to pick who wins because I'm so tied as to who I think is going to win. We'll start with CJ here. Calgary or Edmonton?
So I'm going to go and start with this. Calgary and Edmonton are going to get into some unreal fights. There's going to be some brawls in this series. They really hate each other. This year it's been heating up big time. To Chuck, and who is it? Zach Cassian?
Yeah.
Is it Cassian? Yeah, Cassian and Edmonton. They're just going at it. And to Chuck is just the biggest prick on the ice. I mean, that guy's just a total asshole. And they don't, he gets targeted out there, but he loves it. He draws a lot of penalties. I say this series goes 7, and I like the Edmonton Oilers for one reason: Connor McDavid. I'm just going to leave it at that. Well, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are the two best players in the series, and they play for the same team. So there you go.
All right, Steven.
Yeah, this is a toss-up. It's almost a flip of a coin. Like CJ just said, give the advantage to the Oilers here because of the McDavid and Draisaitl combination. But going back off how ugly this series could be, the amount of fights you could see. We talked going back to the middle of the season. We saw that line brawl with the goalies coming to center ice. Holy shit! Give me Zach Cassian and Kachuk in a 12-round boxing match or a cage fight, and I would pay to see that. Just talk about a series that could be fun to watch. Make this series great again. Battle of Alberta. You couldn't ask for a better stage to be on, except first round of the playoffs. But looking at these two teams, Kachuk leading the scoring for the Flames there. Gaudreau, kind of he's quiet the whole year. Their defensive pairings in Giordano, Rasmus Anderson. I think the Oilers could really overwhelm them with their top line scoring with Draisaitl, McDavid, Nugent Hopkins, and then you got Clefbaum with their leading defensive scorer. Darnell Nurse can push people around too and fight as well. I give the edge.
Yeah,
to
I
the
think
Oilers,
I'm with
but
you,
it'll
both
be
of
a
you
close
on this.
one.
I
It's
think
going
you
to be
just have to
ugly.
give the advantage to
Who's
Edmonton
going to grind
because
it
of their
out?
stars. But one thing we can all definitively say here, if the Oilers lose this series, they're a little fucked because where do they go if they lose another playoff series here? They missed the playoffs a few times with McDavid. If you lose another playoff series, where do you go if you're Edmonton?
Yeah, you got to make some moves. It's just McDavid's been sitting here too a long time. People are wondering, well, can he get this team to the top? It's not even, you can't even put the blame on him. He's doing everything he can to get that team to where they wanted to be, winning the playoffs. You have a Leon Draisaitl just off the charts. The goaltending's been the issue. Year in and year out, you have guys who can't carry their weight. You can't rely on a guy like Mike Smith to carry you to a cup final. That's just my opinion. He just is too up and down for me to be, hey, we're going to give you the crease every night and you're going to win us 16 games in the playoffs. I don't see him being able to do that as a guy. I mean, he's been in the league too long. He's been with the Lightning. He's been with Edmonton as well. He's been around, tossed around.
Yeah.
Yes, he's made a career for himself, but I think the problem with Edmonton is, yeah, Coyotes too. Yeah. I mean, he's been a journeyman in the NHL, and he's made a living, but I think if you're the Oilers, you lose this series, you got to go bolster up on the defensive side, get some help around McDavid. He has help already in the first line, but you got to get some depth there and get a goalie.
I think that they're a defense
and just really kind of sell out and try to get yourself a cup.
I actually like who's in net for them again, because I've
got
liked him
Mike
this
Smith,
year,
but then 6'7".
Koskinen. I liked him. I like him. I like
Koskinen.
I think that they need to upgrade the defensive end. I think they play a very run and gun heavy type offense, which it's just not sustainable in this league. I think a lot of teams are going to start to go to the St. Louis Blues route, and I think that the Oilers they have so much offense that if they can get two guys in offseason that they can spread out, one on D pair one on D pair two, that just shore up some issues, they're like really close to being that good, because that's just how unbelievable Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are, especially Connor McDavid. So I think the two best players in the series are on the same team, so I'm going to go 7 games just because of the rivalry, and I like the Oilers.
All right, so that's how we're going to do it here. I think we've covered all the bases, guy. We've gone over all of these teams here. It's really close. I think you look at the West. This is a conference that's just not as good as the East. I think there's way more talent over there, and that's kind of shifted from years past where the West was really dominating. You had the Blackhawks and the Kings with their dynasties over there, and now it's kind of shifted over to the East with the big guns, with Pittsburghs and the Washingtons and the Bostons and Tampas. They're just way better than any team over here on this side. So, but yes, that'll do it for this podcast. We're planning on doing some more NHL pods as we keep going here. Maybe some semifinal or conference final prediction pods are on the way. We definitely have that coming with the NBA. With CJ and I, we'll discuss that going forward. But for the rest of the week, we have our San Francisco Giants pod that's already been uploaded today. Tomorrow, you'll get our Diamondbacks pod. On Wednesday, you'll get our Dodgers pod. And then on Thursday, our National League Playoff Predictions podcast. On Friday, we'll start over with the American League West and the Seattle Mariners. We have NFL draft talk coming soon. That'll be sometime next week, right before the draft. And then, of course, we'll have post-draft, talking about what the look of the league's looking at like over the NFL. And we'll probably talk about how the XFL shut down as well on that podcast. But yeah, that'll do it for CJ Uri and Stephen Cashin. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and a bunch of other platforms. You can follow us on Strict Sports FAU as well. And we will see you guys next time.